Hi, everyone. Can you hear us all? Yeah, I can hear myself. I'm Zayd. It's so nice to have everyone here. I know there's still a few folks coming in, but find a seat. Again, I'm Zayd Badwan. I lead the enterprise team at a education company called Uplimit, where we are trying to solve the big problem of the topic we're talking about today, which is how do you motivate and engage adult learners? I'm very honored and excited to have this group of folks with us today. And we're gonna start off a little untraditionally in that I'm gonna have folks introduce themselves and then share one thing that they wanna celebrate in 5 years, which if you've interacted with anyone from Uplimit, you know that this is a question I ask a lot. Typically, they're not professional accomplishments, and I did give folks a heads up before this that they'd be answering this question, so let's see what folks came up with. Corey, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. Corey Hynes, the founder of a company called Skillable. We do experiential learning. So basically take software, package it up in sandboxes, score it, develop it, do it at massive scale. Been doing this, it's a 25-year-old startup. So in 5 years, my older daughter should be graduating college. And so that, well, yeah, and she's the first one of the family to ever go to college. I never went to college, so it's a big deal. And we're pretty, like, she's going to the Northeastern Business School, which was pretty tough to get into, so pretty proud of her, and fingers crossed she makes it. She will.
Is she already in college?
No, she's a senior, so she'll make it. Smart kid, she'll make it.
That's great. So I'm Diane Bartoli. I run the Ed Advisory business at Bright Horizons, which encompasses tuition benefits and other education benefits, loan repayment, college coaching. So we have a pretty sizable team of coaches, in addition to a fairly robust platform of administrating all of those benefits on the behalf of lots of Fortune 500 companies and others. And I have a very similar goal. I have 2 daughters, the oldest of whom is a freshman in college right now. And the thing that I'm looking forward to in 5 years is that she will not be a drain on the household, but actually maybe, paying her own way. And, I do think, though, that this age that our kids are in is a very, very different world, and one in which, what she will be looking for in a employer, I'm guessing, given that she's interested in public health, is an employer who will help pay for the next degree or pay for the ongoing learning that happens after her bachelor's. So, yeah, that's about me and what I'm looking forward to. One less kid to pay for.
Hello, everyone. My name is Krishna. I'm the founder and CEO of Simplilearn. We are the largest bootcamp in the world for digital skills. So looks like we all are of the same age group and have similar things that we're looking forward to. In my case, it's not the daughter, it is the son. So I have 2 kids, and I'll not have a teenager at home in the next 5 years arguing. He'll be out of, hopefully he should complete by that time. He's a junior in high school. So in 5 years, he'll exactly finish his graduation. So I'm looking forward to that.
Sounds good. I can talk about my teenage kids too, but I'm not actually. I'm Michelle Westfort. I'm the Chief University Officer of InStride. InStride is a B2B tech-enabled workforce solutions provider, and ASU founded. So excited to be here at our 5th year anniversary, which was announced 5 years ago here at ASU+GSV. But actually in 5 years, thinking back to where we are as a society, I actually am praying for world peace. So thinking about something a little bit broader than my own family, but as a joke, truly, if I had to think about where I want to be in 5 years, given this AI revolution that we're in, I'm hoping that there's an AI that can actually create and do my grocery shopping. I think that there's something like that out there today, but I'm hoping
Alexa
that
can do that.
There you go.
Amazon Alexa.
Yeah, copy. Thanks.
All right. I'm Shravan, Goli, Chief Operating Officer at Coursera, which is a largest global online learning ecosystem where we're connecting learners, educators, and institutions. I don't know what else can I add, or maybe keep saving my marriage, I guess. So it's been great. 27 years.
We're only on the
It's still
first
going
question.
on.
Throw her in the war.
This part is not being recorded or it's being edited out. So I think, I got a similar 19-year-old, second year college, and then a junior high. I'm hoping where we don't exchange, one leaves the house and the other comes back to the house. And that's another problem because I'm hoping for a life where I could actually go around, work from anywhere in the world.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump right into the discussion because 40 minutes goes by really fast. And anchor us really quick by sharing sort of my background is actually started as a facilitator and an instructor-led modality where you bring people into a room, which I know we haven't had chances to do in many years. And those folks sat in the room and they listened and they learned. And then I got to spend a big part of my career with my Coursera family, which I know there's a bunch of folks out here as well, where it was on-demand learning, and we spent a lot of time thinking about how do you drive true, meaningful engagement across scalable learning. And I know that that's why many of you are here today. And I know that this AI revolution that we just talked a bit about is here or coming. I don't really know, but it's definitely something that we all need to be thinking about in the education space. So I want to kick off with the first question to actually Corey and Diane, which is why is it so important to motivate and engage adult learners?
So I think it is so important because of what I was referencing earlier, actually, which is that the companies that we work with, and I think this is probably true for InStride too, right? The companies that we work with, their success is very much predicated on how good they are at mobilizing and realizing the full potential of their workforces, right? So for any given company, whatever their mission may be, we work with a lot of healthcare companies, we work with a lot of manufacturing companies, retailers, all different kinds of companies. And many of them, most of them have frankly quite noble missions. They can't realize those missions unless their talent is able to fully realize their potential. So creating learning solutions, which we work with them on and putting those in place, is only half the battle. The other half of the battle is ensuring that folks are set up to take advantage of those. So part of it is motivation, and we talked about this a little bit in prep for this. I think a lot of people are innately motivated, right? Most actually want to improve their position in life, whether it's earning potential for their family or their own personal skill set, their career, etc. What they don't necessarily have is all of the conditions to realize that, to take advantage of that, right? Do I have the time from work to allow for it? Do I have, do I have childcare, which I may need, right, in order to take advantage of that? And so I think it's so important, though, because in order for any company to be able to do what it needs to do, they need to have a workforce that's continuously learning.
I've got a slightly different take on that, which is maybe just at a more granular level. I kind of go back to the days when I first got in this industry. I taught for years, right? I taught in colleges, I taught in technical trade schools, I taught all these things. And the thing I always tried to nail down was when you get someone in the room and you get their attention, how do you keep it? Right? Because it's one thing to say you have to go take training. It's another thing for them to actually pay attention and retain it. For you to capture that few minutes of their attention, their focus. I've taken 100 HR courses that I couldn't tell you what they were about because I just hit play and then I watched YouTube, which was interesting, right? So how do you turn around and make education training interesting enough that when someone's in the moment, they care enough to put their mental focus on it, right? Our company focuses exclusively on hands-on, right? You go in there and do things, and the way that you architect those experiences, how quickly you get past the preamble to the relevant bits, how much you eliminate the things they don't care about, how dynamic you can make it, all goes to how you capture someone's attention. If you have their attention, then the investment is worth it. There's no point in just putting it in front of them and counting how many minutes they spent with it open on their screen, right? 5 minutes of attention is better than 5 hours of watching.
Before I ask a bit of a radical question, I agree with you, Diane, that there's both motivation and ability that needs to be addressed when we're thinking about driving adult learning. And my next question is for Michelle and Krishna around what is the potential cost to our society if we don't start to crack this nut? Krishna, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So Zayd, first of all, thank you for assembling this panel, and so excited to be sitting with so many leaders here. So when it comes to adult learners, my take is that we should look at this two category of learners differently, right? There are knowledge workers who have time outside their work to really think about where their career can go, where there is opportunity, and really spend time on learning. And then there are these adult learners who are so-called blue-collar workers. They don't know what to expect, and they're so busy in their life. If they're not doing, let's say, a target cashier job, maybe they are doing Ubering to feed their family. So then they need to be thought differently. And the good news is that we see a lot of employers now even paying for training time also. So while you're working, you also get paid to get trained so that you can move up in your career. So that's a very different category. When it comes to this knowledge worker what we call knowledge worker category, if one of the ways in which we can motivate them, or one of the things that they look forward to, is that what is in it for them if they really complete it successfully? Do they get a promotion? Do they get a salary raise? And if those linkages are done very, very strongly, we see a much higher uptake and much higher completion. And the challenge of what if you don't do? Of course, there is an economic cost of not doing anything, right? You can't keep on paying higher wages to the same person for doing the same role every year, right? So I don't think it's an option. And we see this happening in all the organizations. Like some of the news that we see in today's market, where tech companies are cutting their workforce, but their numbers are improving. So why are they doing it? That's another way of saying that, okay, maybe you're not adding enough value for what we really pay you, right? So it's not an option. We have to do it. If you don't do, maybe somebody else will do it.
Yeah.
I agree with certain parts of that, and I think when we look at risk to our society and we look at broader risk for not motivating these learners and what actually happens, I think the biggest risk is what if we leave behind the populations that really need us the most? So if you think about the frontline workers and we don't solve these challenges of how do we engage, how do we help people identify what skills to pursue, how do we think about the completion rates and ensuring that there is motivation to not only begin some of this course content, but actually complete it? And then finally thinking about how to contextualize the learning that they're going through. I think the biggest risk is actually not addressing that as a broad population. Of course, we can talk about things like widening the skills gaps. Of course, we can talk about things like, what happens to the employer who funds this education, and yet, there's not a positive ROI in their investment, right? We can talk about all of those things, but fundamentally, if we can solve the motivation aspect to this broader problem, I like how Krishna thinks about it. There's a knowledge workforce and then there's a frontline workforce. And we certainly don't want to leave that frontline workforce behind. But when you think about the knowledge workforce, there's kind of a through line, which is simply that regardless of the knowledge workforce or the frontline workforce, it's actually really hard to find the time to do the work. And yet, there's the human condition behind it, which is that everyone actually really wants to pursue new skills and wants to learn more. So I think if we polled this room, it would be all knowledge workers. But I would be able to guess that most of you would say, I do want to learn new things. I have a thirst or I have a curiosity to learn new things. And so if we take that and think about how to motivate people to not only pursue, but to succeed and complete, to find the right time to pursue education, we're working towards balancing the act between really understanding intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, as Krishna mentioned. Do we actually think that there's a job or a pay raise at the end of the learning? And the reality may be that the answer is no. So if the answer is no, how do we continue to maintain these workers? And I think that the answer to that is ultimately recognizing that the human condition is such that we want to continue to learn regardless, because we want to attain more knowledge and we want to learn more about the world and people and our surroundings and ways in which we can be better humans.
So you brought it up, Michelle, so I'm gonna poke at it for just a second, which is I got a chance to have breakfast with a CLO friend of mine this morning who said, I've heard the term culture of learning 20 times and I've been here for 6 hours. And so what does that mean? What do I do about it? And Shravan, I know that Coursera has opportunities to work like broadly across governments and nonprofits and companies. What does a culture of learning mean to you? And what are the benefits to an organization or a society if we really have a culture of learning?
Yeah, I was all kinds of great points here, knowledge workers, frontline workers. I think fundamentally when I think about this, what's really driving a lot of the motivation for learning is disruption, right? So if you kind of walk back a little bit, it was digital transformation, it's automation, globalization through COVID, and now with Gen AI. So in fact, both the class of workers that you mentioned are getting disrupted. And so I think to me, yes, we should have inherent motivation to learn, change, and grow. That's our value. But fundamentally, if you're not learning and developing new skills that map to the emerging skills that are required by the employers, as an individual, you're outdating yourself consistently. So to me, I think there is sort of that motivation that needs to come. Now, how is that going to happen? Part of it is knowing that you're getting outskilled and outsmarted. And part of that job from an employer perspective is to continue to invest in sort of upskilling and reskilling these individuals into those in-demand jobs and areas. Because the employer problem is fundamentally retention, so creating an engaged and agile workforce. Second is to be able to attract the talent. And if you think about these emerging skills and the jobs, you don't have enough skilled people that have these jobs. And you have a problem who are like a dissatisfied workforce because they're finding themselves to not be able to have upward mobility or horizontal mobility, right? So I think that is, to me, I think the motivation that kind of brings these two people together, right? The employer and the individual together. And as you kind of think about, Coursera, obviously you kind of gave a little bit of an ad there, but I'll build on that, obviously. So, just in terms of kind of the role we play is we're bringing the content from the best in the world, whether it's industry or universities, taught by the best experts in the world, that are teaching these emerging skills, that are creating a pathway for these individuals to gain those skills and credentials that can put them onto those kinds of jobs. And so I think that's where it all comes down to.
So I'm going to poke a little bit more with you, Shravan, specifically around these like broad cultures of learning that I think we're all talking about. And one of the questions I think a lot of learners have, or a lot of organizations have outside of the learning space is, where do I start? What course do I pick? What should I learn? Yeah. And Coursera has a big catalog of courses. How would you sort of give anyone guidance on sort of where to start?
Yeah, if my CEO was not here, I probably would have faked an answer here, but so putting that aside, I think we talk about sort of where is sort of the motivation coming from the individual, right? So you're seeking a new career, you're trying to upskill in the current job, or you're trying to get a new degree to advance in your career. So if I think about those are sort of the different motivations, then the question becomes like, okay, for an individual, what is sort of the matching that needs to happen in terms of their sort of motivation? And so for some, we have what we call as stackable formats of content, meaning like, you can start with just a video, watch a video, learn quickly understand the concept a little bit. You can take a project and learn how you actually can use a tool like, Tableau. You could take a course to kind of actually get certain level of skills within that course, so that's kind of more in the upskilling. Ultimately, then, you can actually get all the way down to a professional certificate that gives you a credential to put you into the job, entry-level jobs, and then a degree that gets you into an advanced career. So the thing is, we're not saying start with this big thing in front of you, understand your motivation, and kind of try to get them into the right content for the right time is kind of how we think about it. In the world of enterprise, our institution side of the equation, we have three flavors, right? We have businesses, governments, and universities or campuses that we're working with. So if I think about campuses as an example, The problem for campuses is ultimately proving employability in their education. And the employability in a way that the education is affordable and accessible, but yet they're able to build all the signaling that is required as you graduate out of these campuses to get a job. And so we have what we call as Career Academy, which has about 50 different professional certificates that are mapped to specific entry-level jobs. So here, where you're tying in really sort of the outcome that the institution is looking to get through for improving the employability of the students, but also make it super easy for themselves. Like, they can't produce this content. They don't have the time, or even probably sometimes even the faculty to teach these skills. So integrating this content is creating an ability for the institution to lower the cost and make it super easy to get in there. So that's just one example.
Yeah. And that leads me, Krishna, to a question for you, which is one, how do you think about recommending where a learner should start or what skill they should build? And then two, I know that we're all trying different modalities to drive learner engagement, and I know that you all think about a balance between synchronous and asynchronous. So how do you strike that balance?
Sure. So interesting, we have all kinds of players here. So let me just call out is that, see, if somebody asks me that where should I start as an individual, not as Simplilearn, my answer is going to be make a start. Don't worry where do you want to make a start, but make a start, because that is better than not doing anything. Now, my business model is that we believe that content is commodity. So why should I charge for content when the best content out there is available on YouTube? So with that philosophy on Simplilearn platform, if you can learn using my curriculum, it's absolutely free. And a lot of people do it. So today, if you just go to LinkedIn and search for Simplilearn, every few minutes, there is a learner sharing a certificate saying that I learned Type-2, I learned Excel, I learned, like every course that we offer is out there for free. So that's one model that we have, and it's absolutely free, no credit card, nothing. Certificate also is free. Our paid model is then once, if you want to get taught by instructor, you want to get taught in a cohort, and you want to get taught by like somebody grading your projects, giving you feedback, and also walk away with a credible third-party certificate like in university or one of our industry partner. That's our paid model, right? So this model also attracts to people who are more motivated, they are ready to spend more, and they are more disciplined. So that's that approach. But having said that, we see learner on both the sides. It's a question of business model, but my strong belief is there's no right and wrong answer. The world is so big that there are all kinds of learner, and there can be all kinds of learning like pedagogy that will attract to them. So short answer is make a start.
Michelle, I'd like to go to you next, because I know that we chatted a bit about this in the prep, but we've seen all kinds of organizations do good jobs and not so great jobs of connecting the learning to the business impact. And I'm curious, like, what advice would you give, and where have you seen this done really well?
So it's done really well with organizations that actually take an intentional view to what they want to put into a program design. So when you think about launching a program, if it's very broad, there's a lot of great benefits to that. If it's highly curated, there's also great benefits to that. So as we think about the objectives and the outcomes that the employers want, we see it really well when it's tied to not only specific business functions, but ways in which learners can actually visualize and see themselves through those career paths. So one of the things that InStride recognized very early on is that we think about things from a degree perspective, but if we reduce the requirement for an employer to have that degree requirement in, we can actually expand the populations that they can serve. But there needs to be some kind of path to get there. So really working with them on identifying what could be the potential solution and making that happen. But we've also seen it work where an employee can visualize themselves taking that path. So career education pathways allow you to not only visualize yourself taking the first step in the journey. I love when Krishna says just start somewhere, but actually recognizing that that path will lead you to some kind of career. And we've seen that work the best when employers can not only create the optimal conditions, as Diane said, like that really, really matters if you have the optimal conditions, but it also matters with employees being able to visualize and see themselves in that path and in that journey. But then the last thing that I would say is there are several things that we can continue to do to motivate people to completion. And I'll tell you, part of it is that you go through a cycle in learning. Part of it is starting and going through a real big high. This is really exciting for me. I'm going to take this. It's going to be awesome. And then somewhere around like week 1, maybe week 2, you get a crash where it's like, this is really hard. It's taking a lot of my time. I really don't understand this content, right? And you see this regardless of who the learner is. It could be, the smartest person in the room, and yet they tend to go through, we all do, and I'll say this from a firsthand experience. I decided to take an AI course. I'm about 5 weeks into it, and to be honest with you, I was very excited in the beginning, and then I started to see how much time, effort, and energy, and it was quite hard. I remember calling a couple of people and said, I am going to fail this. I feel really embarrassed. It's one of our learning options, but I'm not going to complete it. What should I do? But you get through that bottom hump, and once you start to achieve an I can do this, and a momentum, a routine, but there are things that employers can do. There are ways in which we can nudge managers. Managers can be a part of that process. There are ways in which we can continue to ensure that people feel good and make it through that hump, and then you can start to celebrate some of the successes. But an employer who sees the challenges, a learner who sees that they can make it through those humps, and intermediaries like InStride and some of the other platforms and providers who can all support the journey throughout. It's going to take a village, but we recognize that that truly does happen. So I think that those are the kinds of things that we've seen work really well in healthcare, work really well in manufacturing, work broadly in distribution, work well in the restaurant business. And so there isn't a specific vertical that I would say it works best here or works well there. It's really a holistic solution that works the best.
And Corey, I know Skillable focuses on sort of lab application-based. Where have you seen organizations connect sort of like the business outcomes to learning?
I'll be super practical on this. We have hundreds of companies that have pretty elaborate skilling programs, and most of them are built around some kind of software. The ones that have the most success are the ones that take the time to truly figure out what skills they care about and where those skills apply in the organization. And they understand that, to use a simple example, Excel is not a skill, right? Excel's a product. A skill is something like creating visualizations of data using charts and graphs, right? It's a descriptive, it's a task, it's an activity. And the companies that take the time to figure out what roles in the organization require what skill, figure out what's the best way to deliver that skill. Maybe it is video, maybe it is, hands-on or labs, whatever the case might be. And then use that to create a pathway for success. We talked about motivation earlier, and there's nothing more motivating than seeing a very clear path to a reward, whether it's a promotion, a raise, whether it's a new opportunity. And those organizations that take the time to really figure that out in advance recognize that topics are not skills. Skills are things you're able to do, and they figure it out and they take the time to map it. We in the platform we've built all these great tools where you can at a very granular level map specific activity in specific environments to skills, and then score those skills to verify that folks can do them. Like, very practical thing. Takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of effort. Not everyone does it. I can't tell you how many companies give me their skills taxonomy and it's just a product list. It's like, no, that doesn't work. You've actually got to figure out what you want people to know how to do in these products. They have an incredible amount of success.
So it's a good point, and Diane, I'm coming to you next, which is a little bit about this like elephant in the room that we don't really want to talk about in today's world, which is using both a carrot, which is what everyone sort of referenced a little bit today, but there is this like fear thing that I think we all sit with a little bit as we talk to our organizations or our clients or our partners who say things like, I don't know if upskilling in AI is a very important thing right now. Inside, I'm cringing and like, oh, because what we know, there's the carrot of promotions and raises and all that stuff. But Diane, I'd love to hear from your perspective, like that balance between why don't companies talk about the bad that might come from not upskilling?
So great question. And I think this actually goes back to the beginning where you're talking about the culture of learning, right? So, and that everybody's talking about, we need to foster a culture of learning. Well, why do you need to foster a culture of learning? Well, if you don't foster a culture of learning, that means people aren't learning, and that means your company is probably going to enter stasis and die. Like, not to put too blunt a point to it, but like, it's not just for unicorns and rainbows that people are sort of looking for to inspire a culture of learning. It is inspired by the disruption that's being invited by all kinds of technological advancement, and it is the natural, I completely agree about the points you were making earlier around there is no better motivator for learning than it's innovate or die, right? And so you've got to figure out how to kind of create a culture around people wanting to do that. So that all being said, I do think though, it's not particularly motivating for a lot of people. Some people are motivated by fear pretty well, but for most people, that's actually massively demotivating, right? It makes everybody want to just, pull the covers over their head and go back to sleep. And instead, demystifying or making some of the technological advancements and the learning that's going to be required to overcome those achievable or feel more achievable and accessible is, I think, the way to kind of move through that. So, for example, AI. Everybody's worried about, you've got some group of people who are super excited about AI because of all the promise it portends, and then you have just as many people, if not maybe even slightly more, completely freaked out about AI. And mostly insofar as like what part of my job is going to be replaced by AI, and is my entire job going to be replaced by AI? They're not going to need me anymore, right? And I think the way to demystify, and I'll be honest, like I see this in the work that we do, right? So we're of course experimenting with AI across a whole bunch of different use cases. And in some cases, customer service, right? So you have customer service folks who are dealing with clients all the time saying, why are you experimenting with this? And as soon as we start to give them a taste of, you're going to be able to operate at a higher level, right? You're going to get to stop doing the stuff that is mundane, boring, repetitive, right? And start to focus on the unique use cases that actually are really value driving for clients and have much more engaging conversations with learners and clients because of using AI, right? Then it starts to shift, and particularly gets better when you say, I'm going to actually hand the AI over to you, and you tell me how you should be using this to make life better. Right? So I do think that, that the whole reason for all of this culture of learning and the motivation around these things is because we all need to kind of innovate to move forward. And this notion of, we're on this journey together, this culture of learning, but I don't think, that the downside is sort of, I think, obvious for everybody. It's like, we don't do these things, we will not be as competitive.
Shravan?
If I could just add, we at Coursera, obviously, we have been really embracing generative AI since at least for 15 months and building a lot of different products, et cetera. But I think part of the challenge here is I don't know how to apply AI in my day-to-day job. Mm-hmm. But then it was just like, why? Why do you need to apply AI? Well, if you can actually align that with what the company is trying to achieve, which is really right now at the first wave of this, it is about building products using generative AI as a technology. And so I think if you can just kind of align a whole bunch of people in innovation, which is kind of what we did like last year when we usually have annual makeathons, and we called it AI Makeathon, and there was like a whole convergence of ideas that were generated. Everybody is going and learning about generative AI and coming up with ideas that are trying to solve real business problems. So to me, I think that shows more excitement and energy whenever you can achieve that. When we try to kind of mandate, and this is a real example, when we try to mandate and say everybody needs to do this particular course around generative AI, about 50% did it. It's like called mandated learning. So to your point, fear is not the way. I mean, there's carrot versus stick, but at the end of the day, the carrot comes from the fact that you have an advancement in your job and career because you're actually creating more value for your business and for your customers. That's for second wave. I think most certainly there's a lot of conversations around productivity. McKinsey put out the data about $4 trillion of productivity being unlocked. We know the kinds of jobs that are going to be most impacted or most automated, which is customer support, software engineering, marketing, and sales, et cetera. So we've been also looking at like, okay, team by team, function by function, so you can actually do map job, task. You do the job task analysis and map tasks to those jobs. So that's the next wave that is coming, to my opinion. Right now, a lot of the companies and executives are really still trying to kind of make sense out of this. In fact, Upwork published a study just about 2 weeks ago, where they polled the awareness of how well do you think generative AI is being used in your company. Now, the CEO level C-staff member said 75%. The next level said about 50%. The next level said, 40%, and all the way to ICs, it's like 30%, right? So as you go down this, like at the top level, we're all thinking, oh yeah, the whole company is using generative AI. But the fact of the matter is, it's not translated in terms of their day-to-day job yet. And all the tools, most job functions are going to use, whether it's marketing or sales or development, et cetera, you have these co-pilots. All the features are going to come into those tools. And that's how they're going to actually get more and more acquainted with this. So there's also a little bit of like, we need to give this a little bit of time to bake in.
So there's upskilling around AI and then teaching people how to use AI tools. But Michelle, I'm curious from your perspective, there's the like, how do we use AI in the learning ecosystem to drive motivation? And what have you seen that has been impressive for you?
Yeah, so we recently polled our learners and we got 14,000 responses. And one of the things that was very interesting about the data was that people were trying to figure out what skills should I pursue. That was kind of top of mind for people, like what should I do? And so if we think about it from a product standpoint, we think about what could we be leveraging with AI. I'm massively excited about the ability to make personalized recommendations. Being able to pull from not only a subset of data where people in the past were self-reporting, for instance. I mean, anyone in the admissions world would know that you'd throw a call center at it and somebody would pick up the phone and say, what would you like to pursue? And are you interested in so-and-so? And would you like to? And we don't actually have to do that anymore and try to figure out directly. You can think about it from a speed perspective, being able to address a student in the immediate. I think about my own children who would prefer to communicate via text or chat. And AI really accelerates that. So we're starting to see more and more momentum around being able to identify what skills people should pursue, being able to have those direct conversations with a bot, but be able to leverage AI in those ways. But we can take it like very clearly throughout the student journey and say, these things are not only going to work to engage people to start, but actually to continue that behind the scenes knowledge of here are the inputs that we're pulling from, whether they're connections from an HRIS or whether they're looking at click behavior in order to create some kind of predictive analytics that enables us to see, hey, this is something that we should do to not only engage and motivate them in the future. So we're starting to see that within the learning and using that in AI. I'm massively excited about where that goes. I mean, we're all AI companies now, right? So I think that we can take it from a product standpoint, but we're going to start to see the outcomes from it too.
Perfect segue to my final question to actually all of you, which is in a handful of words. How would you summarize how your company's thinking about AI today?
We think about it from a couple of terms. So there's tools we're building in the platform, Copilot-ish tools, to basically streamline what authors do. But the way we think about it is, if you've ever built a course, and most of us here have probably at some stage or another been involved in building a course, it's a very proactive activity. You figure out what you think they want to need, what you think they're going to learn, you write it all, you research it, you build it, you deliver it, you hope you're right. What we're doing with AI now is we're letting the authors give indications of what the person's going to do, but let the content get generated on the fly by AI, and give the learner control over where they want to go deeper. It's a model we call learner-led learning, but it's real simple. You say, hey, you want to learn Excel? I'm going to give you a task in Excel, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. If you know how to do it, go ahead and do it. If you don't, there's a clue you can click on, and AI will generate the procedures for you. Saves the author time, saves the learner time, arguably makes it quicker to get to the end state, quicker to develop a skill, just better across the board. I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah, so a couple of ways. So first, as curriculum, frankly, right? Lots of our clients are saying our workers need to understand the possibilities of AI. They need a skill set around assessing what may be AI friendly versus not, right? So it's increasingly an area that we're working on with clients in terms of content development for them. Or finding learning for them around that. The second is around productivity, right? So scaling some of our productivity and using AI for that. So you heard me reference the, what I would call customer service use cases earlier. The last I'll say is, which is kind of awesome, is it used to be the only way to scale was to simplify or uncomplicate, if you will, or move away from customization, right? So move towards, widgets that all sort of look the same way. One of the things that's really great about AI is like customization is actually becoming more scalable, right? And so whether it is a coaching session, right? So I'm a coach and I'm working with a learner and I have at my disposal AI tools that are helping me direct that person in a much more effective way than I might have otherwise. Or it's frankly at the policy level where this client, may have a very, very specific policy because they have a very wide and diverse set of employees, union members, non-union members, et cetera. And I can accommodate all of that complexity with a lot more efficiency because of what AI is making possible. So it's all of those things: scale, as curriculum and learning development, and productivity.
So in our case, there's a very clear mandate that don't talk about AI for the sake of talking about AI. Use it only when it makes sense. We have seen 3 use cases where we see that we are already seeing benefit and we can see more benefit: curriculum, marketing, and personalized feedback. So these are the 3 areas that we are doubling down, and of course there are a lot of other areas that it can impact, but this is where we are today.
I'm watching the clock, so I'm
Going
going
in
to
the
do one.
opposite direction now.
I'm doing one word: contextualized.
Oh, wow. I can't beat that. But
3 words, Shravan. I believe in you.
my words
I
are
believe
done.
in you.
I guess, so just to kind of, I'll just elaborate a couple of points if I can get 30 seconds here. First is on the learner side and the learner experience side of the equation. We've been experimenting with Coursera Coach for over a year now almost. And a lot of what we're finding is we've been talking to a lot of these learners. It's very inspirational to actually hear the quotes from these learners. So I'll just read out a quote from this learner, which I think encapsulates what the essence of the coach is. He said, "I was really confident in going into Coursera. Once the video started getting a little harder, I wasn't understanding, to your point like earlier. That's where I was losing a lot of confidence. I don't know if this," which was, he's doing Google IT, "is right for me." And the coach really did boost my confidence. It kept me going. I didn't feel like I was going to finish strong if I didn't have it. We didn't have this level of capability, I would say, before generative AI came in and really commoditized the ability for us to accelerate innovation like this. And so I'm excited about continued pedagogical innovation where we often think about, from a learner perspective, it is about discover, learn, showcase, and advance. I think a lot of this is really impacting how you're learning, but also how you can actually showcase and apply that learning to advance. And so the pedagogical improvements in terms of like, instead of repeat what you learned, to show me how you're thinking about and how you're solving the problems, et cetera, which are the durable skills in the post-AI world. I think that's where we're focused a lot on.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. I think most of us will hang out if folks have questions, but thanks for joining us and have a great rest of your conference, everyone.
Thank you, Zayd.